During his first visit to Kiev, the German Chancellor promised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Monday the accelerated payment of 150 million euros from a loan that had already been granted, as well as a new loan of 150 million euros. Germany is very close to you, he said to the Ukrainians. But the German no to arms deliveries remains the same. However, it's being examined whether the Bundeswehr can deliver other military equipment such as night vision devices, mine clearance devices, or tracking devices to Ukraine. The left parliamentary group leader Dietmar Bartsch has proposed former Chancellor Angela Merkel as a mediator in the Ukraine conflict. She has the authority with both parties to the conflict that is necessary to calm the situation, Bartsch told the newspapers of the Funke media group. The federal government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz does not have the mediating role that his predecessor Merkel played as Chancellor, especially with the Minsk Agreement of 2015. The federal government would be well advised to work with France to propose Merkel as a possible peace mediator between Russia and Ukraine. In 2015, Merkel and then French President François Hollande mediated in the negotiations on a peace plan for eastern Ukraine in the Belarusian capital of Minsk. Parts of Ukraine's regions along Russia's borders have been controlled by pro-Russian separatists for almost 8 years. Kiev and Moscow accuse each other of violating the agreement. In view of the deployment of tens of thousands of Russian soldiers on the border with Ukraine, there are fears that the Kremlin is planning an invasion of the neighboring country. Moscow has vehemently denied this for weeks. Shortly before the conclusion of the taking of evidence, the Bundeswehr officer Franco A., who was suspected of being a terrorist, was taken into custody because of the risk of escaping and collusion. The 33-year-old was arrested by a special police unit on Sunday morning, said a spokeswoman for the higher regional court in Frankfurt. He should be presented to the State Protection Senate of the court in the morning. A sensational process is currently taking place against him at the higher regional court in Frankfurt, in which the pleadings are expected shortly. The trigger for the renewed custody was a person check on Friday evening in Offenbach. The court spokeswoman said that objects were found on him that could be used as evidence. She did not give any more details about it. The police also did not provide any information as to whether he was specifically checked or happened to be subject to a general check. According to media reports, he is said to have resisted the check violently. The spokeswoman said that an arrest warrant had been issued on Saturday evening because of the risk of blackening out the stuff, as we would say, and flight. The Senate confirmed the arrest warrant in a non-public hearing lasting several hours. The objects found during the identity check would be evaluated now by the police, it was said in the late afternoon then. Are there any new findings, such as the whereabouts of various weapons that were in the possession of the Bundeswehr officer with the lone fighter training? The rearrest is another twist in the case that has raised many questions since the officer's arrest at the Vienna airport in February 2017. At that time, a comparison of the fingerprints reveals that the officer had registered as a Syrian refugee under a false name and had led a double life undetected for months. He had to answer to the Frankfurt Higher Regional Court for preparing a serious act of violence that is dangerous to the state. The federal prosecutor also accuses him of violations of the Weapons Act, the War Weapons Control Act, the Explosive Act, theft and fraud. According to the prosecutors, the officer planned attacks on politicians. He assumed the false identity of a Syrian refugee in order to suspect an attack on refugees and to shake confidence in asylum policy. The federal prosecutor sees a what we call folkish nationalist attitude as a motive. According to their chairpersons, the health ministers of the federal states largely agree that the corona vaccination obligation for nursing and health staff should be implemented in a balanced manner and in a phased process. Even if many questions are still open, the law should be implemented, said Petra Grimm-Benne, from the Social Democrats in Magdeburg. There is a great deal of agreement in the states about a phased process from mid-March. However, no decision was made on the matter yet. The affected employees should show proof of vaccination within 14 days, said Grimbenne. All those who still want to be vaccinated or who have just had one vaccination, for example, should be allowed to continue working. A distinction should also be made between workers who work directly on patients and those who do other jobs. If employers or health authorities assume that the supply is at risk, it should be possible for an unvaccinated employee to be allowed to continue working for a transitional period, explained Grimbenne, who is health minister in Saxony-Anhalt. Then conditions such as daily testing or working in full protection should apply, and it is also possible to switch to another job. But these are all individual decisions. We believe that an orderly hearing procedure is part of it, said Grimbenne, and that takes time. The principle of proportionality applies, but, she says, we say that when all points have been clarified, then at some point you have to talk about a ban on entry if there are no other reasons. The vaccination obligation applies from March 15th for employees in nursing homes and clinics, but also, for example, in medical practices and in outpatient services for midwives, physiotherapists, and masseurs. The health authorities should ultimately decide on any entry bans. There had recently been heated discussions about the implementation. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.